What are the top 5 traffic ticket myths when a cop is trying to write you a ticket? And what can you do to protect yourself if you find yourself in court? I don't know about you, but nothing ruins my day more than seeing red and blue flashing lights behind me in my rearview mirror. On top of that, few moments are as stressful as a police traffic stop. What do you say? Do you admit to anything? Do you try to beg for a warning? On top of that, if you get a traffic ticket and you choose to fight it, now you'll have to go to court and navigate a maze of traffic ticket laws. So, if you're preparing to fight a new traffic ticket, or maybe you want to prepare yourself for a future police encounter, it's important that you get these myths out of your head. Myth number 1, you should do whatever the cop says because that'll increase your chances of the cop throwing out your ticket. Look, for the most part, it's usually a good idea to comply with police requests for things they are asking from you when they have a legal right to do so. For example, in almost every state, when a police officer asks you for your license and your proof of insurance, you should just be ready to provide that to the officer. Why? Because the law almost always allows for them to ask for it. What if the officer asks you to get out of your vehicle? In that situation, you should almost always comply with that request. Why? Because in my experience, police officers almost always come up with some type of technically legal reason why you should exit your vehicle. But if the officer tries to use your traffic ticket as a basis to now do a further criminal investigation, be prepared to stand up for your rights. In fact, we will cover more on that subject here in a few minutes. Whatever you do, never allow a police officer to trick you into believing that they will likely throw your ticket out if you comply with their requests. Why? Because police officers are legally allowed to lie to you. Never forget, police officers are trained to make you feel comfortable opening up and sharing information with them on the roadside during a traffic stop. Where were you headed so fast? You know you were speeding, right? How long's that taillight been out back there? You have a right to refuse to answer all of these questions. You can politely take the ticket and refuse to answer questions and ask if you are free to go. Myth number 2, errors on my ticket will get my case thrown out. This is one of the most common myths that I hear. Let's say you get pulled over on the side of the road, and when the officer is writing up your traffic ticket, let's say he takes down your name, your address, your phone number, your license plate number, and when he's writing it down, he writes down an 8 instead of a 4 on the license plate number. Does that mean your case can be thrown out in court? Unfortunately, no. The prosecutor can merely ask to amend the traffic ticket. It is similar to the same ability a prosecutor has to amend a misdemeanor information or a felony indictment. Prosecutors can always amend the citation to reflect what they believe is accurate prior to your trial. In other words, if there is a mistake, the court's going to let the prosecutor fix the mistake. Myth number 3, do not sign the traffic ticket. This is just poor advice. Many people have the common misconception that they think if you sign a traffic ticket that you're admitting your guilt. That is just not true. Signing the ticket is merely a confirmation that you actually received the ticket. It's also a myth to claim that if you refuse to sign the traffic ticket, then you can show up to court and claim you never received it to begin with. On the contrary, refusing to sign a traffic ticket can sometimes needlessly elevate the tension between you and the police officer, and it can create hostility and get out of hand really quick. So, if an officer asks you to sign the ticket, you should do it. Why? Because number 1, it cannot be used as an admission of guilt on your end. It doesn't mean you're pleading guilty to anything, and you can still show up and fight the charges in court. As for me, the last thing I want is to be on the side of the road and have a cop go nuts on me because I refuse to sign a traffic ticket. I have seen these situations elevate out of control quickly because the person refuses, the driver refuses to sign the traffic ticket. Now the police officer thinks they're being belligerent, and now they're forcing them out of the car, looking to arrest them for resisting arrest or disorderly conduct, and now they're spending the night in jail. In fact, in states like Oklahoma, Texas, Utah, and Georgia, and a few others, refusing to sign a traffic ticket on the side of the road could actually allow the police officer to arrest you. Now, to me, those laws are ridiculous that they would arrest you for refusing to sign a traffic ticket. But the point I'm making is don't allow these situations to get out of control all over whether or not you're signing a traffic ticket. Take the ticket, sign it, fight it in court, not on the roadside. Myth number 4, cops never show up to hearings. This is unfortunately not true. Police officers show up to court and they get paid to show up to court, and that's part of their job. And in fact, sometimes they get paid overtime in order to show up to court. It's fairly common that officers will work with the court and prosecutors to schedule as many of their citations as possible on one day, so that it makes it convenient for them to show up and fight everything at once. So be aware, if you contest your traffic ticket, I would expect the police officer to be there. Now, what if the cop shows up and now you want more time? What if you ask for what is known as a continuance? Well, there's always a chance that the judge could give you a continuance if you provided good and just cause for that continuance, but I wouldn't count on it. However, if the cop doesn't show up and the prosecutor asks for more time and a reset, I have seen judges being willing to accommodate that request, and they may reschedule the court date for a time that accommodates the officer's schedule. Now, if by chance the officer doesn't show up on the court date and the prosecutor doesn't push real hard for a reset date, there is a very good chance that the judge would dismiss your citation and now your case would be gone. But unfortunately, that's not always the case. So you should have your criminal defense ready just in case you have to go to trial. Myth number 5, traffic tickets don't transfer from state to state, so I can ignore an out-of-state ticket. If you think crossing state lines can help you avoid a traffic ticket, think again. Most people don't realize there is something known as the Driver's License Compact, which is an agreement between 46 states that they will enforce each other's laws, which makes it almost impossible to evade a traffic ticket from another state. In other words, through this compact, your driver's license and your ability to continue to operate a car, and sometimes even your freedom, can be impacted in the state you live if you pick up a traffic ticket in a different state. For example, let's say you're a resident in Texas, but you happen to be visiting the Poconos in Pennsylvania. While you're there, maybe you picked up a speeding ticket. Here's the problem. The DMV in Texas will now be notified that Pennsylvania wrote you a ticket. Because of this reciprocity amongst the states, you should treat an out-of-state traffic ticket just like a ticket you received in your home city. I have seen clients disregard tickets from out of state, and they end up with suspended licenses or failure to appears or warrants for their arrest. Now, one of the questions people ask me is they say, Jeff, why does it really matter? I'm from Texas. I have no plans of ever driving through Pennsylvania again. The problem? Many states keep track of records of your traffic warrants in a nationwide database that they share amongst states. So that means if you get pulled over in your home state or a visiting state, that police officer is going to be able to see you have an active traffic warrant in another state. What if you're in Pennsylvania at the time of this traffic warrant? The problem is, if you're out of state and you get pulled over and you have a traffic warrant, you could end up being held. And I've seen some people be held for 24 to 48 hours before they get released. I don't know about you, but having that active warrant is just not worth that risk. But what if you're arrested locally in your home state and city? In that situation, get ready to be required to post a bond. Any guesses as to the amount of the bond? You're right. It's nearly almost always the same or more than the amount they tried to get you to pay when they first wrote you the ticket. The point I'm making is traffic tickets and warrants from other states will almost always come back to haunt you, and they're not worth ignoring. I have personally seen clients at a court setting tell me that they have a clean driving record, only to learn that the prosecutor pulls up and prints a list of other outstanding traffic tickets from other states. The point I'm making is these type of traffic tickets follow you around like luggage from state to state, so it's important to take care of them. Bonus myth: cops can't use traffic violations to investigate me further. Unfortunately, this is not true. Cops can routinely use traffic violations to launch a much more thorough criminal investigation. This is commonly referred to as a pretext stop. Legally, all a cop needs to pull your car over for a traffic stop is what is known as reasonable suspicion that a crime is taking place. The absolute easiest way for cops to do this is for them to follow you around waiting to see if you will commit a traffic violation. The moment you commit a traffic violation, that's all the police officer needed to establish reasonable suspicion to pull you over, ask you for your driver's license, your proof of insurance, make sure you're driving a roadworthy vehicle, and make sure you don't have any active warrants for your arrest. In fact, police have relied upon this method as one of their most tried and true techniques in order to investigate people for more serious crimes. So what can you do if you get pulled over for like a speeding ticket and all of a sudden you start getting the hunch that the police officer is looking to investigate you for a much more serious offense? Remember, I always advise people to be polite, but do not fall for the police bait of answering all their random questions or consenting to a search of your vehicle. Why shouldn't you consent to a search? Because generally speaking, the moment you consent for the officer to search your car, anything and everything they find can be used against you. Otherwise, police need probable cause that some crime is taking place, separate from the traffic violation, in order for them to justify searching your car. Common examples of how cops develop probable cause to get into your car are things like smelling or seeing items in plain view, or you opening your mouth that leads to them believing you're committing a crime, and now they will have the probable cause to search your vehicle. So what if the officer is being really aggressive and he really wants to search your car? What are some of the things you can do to protect yourself? Number one, always be calm, cool, and collected. Even if the officer is being aggressive with you, if you're cool as a cucumber, you're going to look like the professional one. And remember, everything is almost always being recorded, whether it's on body camera or maybe you choose to record the encounter. Secondly, don't forget you have an absolute right to remain silent, and you should exercise that right. What I mean by this is, other than providing your driver's license and your proof of insurance and establishing you have a roadworthy car with a valid registration, you have no responsibility to interact or speak to this police officer at all. You can always be polite and collected, like I said earlier, and the common thing to say would be to say, "Officer, I exercise my right to remain silent. Am I free to leave?" I say to exercise your right to remain silent because the moment you exercise that right and you remain silent, what you do not say will not hurt you. It's always the things you choose to say, the conscious effort you want to make to try to talk yourself out of the ticket or to explain what's going on in your car. That's what leads to further criminal investigation. Finally, if the officer keeps asking you for consent to search your car, you can say, "Officer, I know you're just doing your job, but I do not consent to a search of my vehicle, and I exercise my right to remain silent." Finally, the real question you should ask in order to make sure you can drive away is to ask, "Officer, am I free to go?" Now, if the officer says, "Yes, you are free to go," drive away. Take the ticket and drive away. If the officer says, "No, you are not free to go," then you can say, "Officer, I exercise my right to remain silent, and I also exercise my right to a lawyer during any other future questioning." Okay, the last thing I was going to cover here, and I talked about it at the very beginning of the video, what can you do if you find yourself in court having to deal with this type of citation? Should you just pay the fine? Absolutely not. Choosing to pay the citation is the same as standing up and saying that you're guilty, and now you will have a conviction on your record. Not only could this ruin your driving record, it will likely result in your insurance rates going up, and it could result in a suspension of your driver's license. Option number one, if you are going to represent yourself in court, the first thing I would do is show up and politely ask the prosecutor for a copy of the evidence. Review the evidence, and if you have a good argument that you did not commit the traffic violation, now is the time to go into the prosecutor and talk to them and share with them exactly why they should dismiss your case. In some cities, you may be dealing with a beat-down municipal prosecutor who may very well be impressed if you come in, review the evidence, provide a polite, professional, and well-reasoned response as to why you were not guilty, and you may be able to convince them to dismiss your traffic violation. But what if the prosecutor refuses to dismiss your case? Now this brings us to option number 2. Under this option, you can go to the prosecutor and look to negotiate a deferred disposition. Now understand something about traffic tickets. Traffic tickets are all about money for the government. They're writing you a ticket. Many of these officers have a quota to meet when they write these tickets, so they really want to make money from you. So if you just go in and pay the fine, you have now something on your record and the government got money from you, okay? But if you go in and negotiate a deferred disposition, here's what it is. It many times requires you to plead no contest to the traffic ticket in exchange for paying a reduced fine. And now the prosecutor may be willing, according to the terms of the deferred disposition, to dismiss your charge if you took a driver's safety course, maybe for a speeding ticket. Or maybe they agree that if you fix your busted tail light, they'll agree to dismiss your ticket. All of this leads to a dismissal on the back end, but the government still gets a little bit of money from you on the front end. Finally, option number 3, hire a lawyer or set it for trial. Although cops do sometimes show up for the trial, remember, the worst thing that can happen on a traffic violation is that you end up having to pay the fine. You're not going to go to jail. But if you were arrested as part of the traffic violation, it makes it even more important to remember to consider to hire a lawyer, because if you don't get the case dismissed, you will not be able to get that arrest off of your permanent criminal record. If you set it for trial and the cop doesn't show up, now your case has been dismissed. If the cop does show up and you're representing yourself, you can give it the good fight, and the worst that can happen is you pay a fine. If you hire a lawyer, now your lawyer can cross-examine that officer and you have a higher probability that your case will be dismissed. Now, what if you find yourself being pulled over for a traffic stop and the cops start questioning you aggressively, and now you feel that the fix is in? Check out this next video where I break down the top 10 traffic stop rights you need to know. See you over there.